Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record. Today being Wednesday, the 14th day of June, 2017. I want to thank you, our listening and viewing audience, for allowing Radio Cayman and by extension For the Record into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. Of course, For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I'm your host, Orit Connor, and you're welcome to join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. Our phone lines are always open. There is always someone there waiting to take your calls. You can call us on our toll-free number provided courtesy of Flo. That toll-free number is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. Of course, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, you can email us at For the Record. That is one word, For the Record, at candw.ky. Before we start to talk about what's happening locally, those of you, many of you may have heard about the building fire in London, in somewhere in the Kensington area, I believe it is. So far, 6 deaths reported. Some people are missing. You would expect a fire of that nature that those numbers will go up in terms of fatalities. We hope not, but I was told that or in reading, we saw where over 200 firefighters responded to that, and many fire engines as well. I've just seen coming in on the Washington Post this morning, gunman opens fire on GOP congressional baseball practice in Alexandria, Virginia, injuring Representative Steve Scalise and others. So that is some breaking news out of Washington as well. We're in a crazy world, crazy times, so many things happening. On our local scene here, what we want to talk about today as well, we see in the last few days as well, a number of robberies taken place. My response to that has always been, when you start to look for people and you start to look at people, the first place you want to look is who has recently been released from Northwood Prison, whose MO is robbery is robbery, right? Modus operandi is robbery. There are criminals who specialize in various, shouldn't call it trade or craft, but activities, let's call it, who specialize in various activities. You have some who specialize in forgery. You have some who specialize in pickpocket, some who specialize in petty burglary, breaking into cars. Then you have the more sophisticated ones who burglarize homes. And of course, you have the robberies, whether or not they're using fake guns or otherwise, which will also fuel the debate as to when do we start to arm citizens of the Cayman Islands to give them the opportunity to defend themselves. Well, my co-host isn't here yet, Miss Teresa, but she's on her way. And when she comes, she can talk more about the justice system, the court system. When you go into court and you go into a case, there is something called equality of arms. So I am allowed to have just as good a lawyer as you, or a better lawyer. If you can have a QC, I should be able to have one as well. Why don't we take that and extend that into the public realm or the private realm, whichever you choose, and say we need to have equality of arms as well when it comes to being confronted by armed criminals. Now, there are people who argue and say the more preponderance of guns means that there's going to be more fatalities, because if the robber knows that you have a gun, then that individual may take more drastic action than just simply holding you up. They may decide right away to injure you to get what they want from you. That may be a valid argument, but there's also a flip side to that as well. If they know that you are armed, then they are more likely to be reluctant to confront you if they know that you are armed. So we have to talk about equality of arms. How do we go about arming citizens? And I'm not talking about every citizen, but at least those persons who have property and lives to protect. So that is one of the issues that we will be talking about this morning as well. The increase in crime. We know that we have many professional police officers out there. They know exactly what they're doing. They know their job as well. We also know that they will rely on informants on the ground for information when it comes to these things. We hope that they do an excellent job in locating these individuals right away. It seems as if these robberies are also linked to car thefts. People are breaking into, criminals are breaking into people's homes, burglarizing, taking the keys for their vehicles, taking the vehicles, then using them in robberies, and then leaving those cars, discarding them afterwards, leaving them in some remote place afterwards. So it means also that if you're not at home, or if you're at home, ensure that the keys to your car are placed somewhere where it is very difficult for people to find them. Don't take them and put them on the kitchen counter or wherever where they're exposed. Well, we know if you're getting up in age like I am, you tend to forget where you put your keys, so you always want to put them somewhere where you know you can see them, but at the same time you don't want to keep them where everyone else can see them as well. But these organized, and I'm going to speak to them as organized criminal activities in the Cayman Islands, we have to get to the bottom of it. And I will maintain, first of all, look and see who has been recently released from prison, or if they haven't been released from prison, who may be out on bail for certain crimes. Now, I'm not saying that the police should profile people, because you're basically against that, but you have to have some starting point in terms of where we look. Mr. Risa, the whole issue of equality of arms in the legal profession, and my argument that we should extend that into the public realm, as well. The criminals have guns, shouldn't be as law-abiding citizens, and if we have something to protect, have the ability to have guns also.
Yeah, that's a pretty tricky one, O.C., and good morning to you and the listeners, and I have to apologize
Good morning.
for
No problem.
coming in just a little late. But it's a hard balance, because on the one, and I mean, I've listened over the years to the argument raised by Danny Warren in particular, and I hope he doesn't mind my calling his name, but I know he's been one of those advocates in favor of guns. For me, my issue is always, and I mean, that will always be one of the concerns that people have in terms of who gets access. For me, I am the one that always talk about what creates this, what causes this. So I am more concerned with what is going on in the community that brings about this increase in crime. And I was looking this morning before I came in, and I noticed that some statistics were released in February of this year. And it says that in 2016, burglaries fell from 652 to in 2015 to 440. So we had a decrease of about 33%. Attempted burglaries fell by 44%, and so on. But the idea behind the violence and the guns that we've been seeing is consistent in pattern with respect to other Caribbean nations. There was a study that was done by the International Development Bank, and they looked at the Bahamas, Barbados, Jamaica, Suriname, and they argue, so their argument is that there is a definite correlation between having the guns, and the burglaries and so on. There seems to be, and this, they argue, stems from violence in the homes. Now that I wasn't so sure about. So I scanned through some of the things that I saw that was written about us, and there was an article in the Compass last year which actually made the same parallels and the same correlation, that there seems to be a pattern where violence is in the home, and then when you have the issues with cost of living and poverty and so on. And in fact, the minister responsible in the Bahamas said that it's usually the youngsters, in particular men, that fall through the cracks that you see getting involved with the gangs and the firearms and with the burglaries. And of course, in some communities, you have that extended to drugs, serious drugs such as heroin. So bringing us back to the Cayman community, when we say that we don't have those types that are criminality and the rate is low, I then also looked at how people view us. I don't know if anyone's taken the time to look at the comments that people make in like TripAdvisor when they visit the community. So if you check the website, and that's not the only one, there are quite a few of them, when they say that, you look at what was your experience in the Cayman Islands, and you will see that people are saying that, we actually sell a lie, that we say that we literally have low crimes or no crimes. So more and more of the persons who visit us actually in the tourism sector are taking note of what's going on here. So we really need to get to the root cause, OC, and see what we need to look at.
Yeah. One of the questions that I was going to ask you, and you can answer it later because we have one caller, was that how reliable are those statistics that we get from the police in relation to the levels of crime? Because they craft them in a way sometimes that make them look good as well. So, and there's I forget which one of the U.S. presidents said there are statistics, and there are statistics as well. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, OC. Good morning, Ms. Teresa.
Good morning,
Hi,
sir.
morning.
How are you?
I'd like to start with a very positive note, and then I'll comment on your current discussion topic. The Blood Bank, our National Blood Bank, is proud to inform our public that we do have a very great windfall of new donors. We did set out to have a very ambitious objective of getting 500 blood donors for the year 2017. As of yesterday, after visiting with our fellow citizens at the Government Administration Building, we were able to secure 70 people there on one sitting. It is beyond belief. We now have a total of over 470 new registered blood donors. That is tremendous. We have not met our half year. We've not met technically. We're just a few days from the middle of the year. And today is June 14th, World Blood Donor Day, even though we celebrated it yesterday. So
Brilliant.
I'd like
Excellent.
to commend our community and all our stakeholders for that. On the matter of what you're currently discussing, there are a number of elements, some that work for us and some that are working against us, and we have to be aware of them. We do have a small population, so in comparison to many other Caribbean neighbors and other countries of similar island layout, our small population works for us. It is an advantage. So we need to take heart that we can do something about our gun violence problem, or robbery problem, or crime problem. A significant correlation is the amount of deportees coming out of the United States based on current immigration policies that have stepped up to have people leave their jurisdiction, and also England. It's important for our law enforcement officials to take note and to keep in contact with all of the actions being taken in other countries, deporting West Indians, deporting some of our neighboring countries, their criminals from their territories. When they come back home, their hands are idle, and they have already been to university, and we look like a soft target. And there is an intelligence network amongst criminals in various jurisdictions, and we are not above that. So it is something for us to bear in mind. There's a direct correlation in the spike of movement of weapons, an increase in certain kinds of violent crimes and scams, and certain types of armed crimes directly related to people who are being deported from the United States, and especially from England, back to their home territories in our neighboring Caribbean countries. So it's an important factor.
Thank you very much, caller, for that. We have to go to a commercial break now. When we return, our conversation will continue. My co-host in the studio with me this morning, Ms. Teresa Pitcairn. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning. Welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, my co-host, Ms. Teresa Pitcairn. Have a message from the Leader of the Opposition. Says, good morning, Mr. Connor. As Leader of the Opposition and Shadow Minister to the Premier and Deputy Governor, I am asking for a statement as to what the government is going to do about the crime our citizens are currently experiencing, especially the robberies involving guns. In addition, I am requesting the government to call a meeting of the National Security Council to discuss this matter and publish a strategy to attack this surge in crime. Very interesting, yes. National Security Council, that performs part of their remit as well. And just like we see in other jurisdictions, the opposition holding the government to account in relation to crime and what strategies are going to be employed to fight it. We see it in our next door neighbor, Jamaica. They have gone through a succession of police commissioners. They have had some success at some points in addressing the issue of crime, and then we see it starting to spike again. Now, some of these crimes are person-to-person crimes, which much more difficult for you to police, But when it comes to organized crime, then that is the area where we find that the police can certainly be more effective.
Can I make 3 points then?
Sure.
So I know in some of the reviews that I've made early this morning that the police tends to suggest that their investigation indicates that a number of the firearm and other serious violence comes about as a result of personal disputes, especially of a domestic nature, and that rapidly escalates into violence. That's one point. And that seems to hold through with a number of statistics in other Caribbean communities. The other issue relates directly to what the previous caller raised, because I too wanted to raise that this morning because I rarely see anything in relation to deportees. In fact, I must have wasted maybe about half an hour this morning scrolling. You put in deportees, Caribbean communities, and whatever to try and see if there is any information on that organized crime and how it affects a soft community like ours. We're always talking about taking care of our borders, and it's a lady in Bordentown used to say, you're beating your gum about this all the time. And we don't seem to be getting any headway with all of that. And there is no real balance between prevention of crime and control. And that's maybe something that we can talk about in the next session. But my third point relates directly to the special responsibilities of the governor under Section 55 of the Constitution. And obviously the governor has responsibility, and it says the governor shall be responsible for the conduct subject to this Constitution and any other law of any business of government with respect to the following matters. And Section 55(1)(c) clearly states internal security, including the police, without prejudice to Section 58 of the Constitution. So going back to the whole idea, and I know this is a topic that is fairly sensitive for us, about trying to balance where the responsibility of the governor begins and where that ends, and then with respect to our leaders as well, because they're the people that we go to the poll to actually vote in, and we assume that they're responsible. We have seen a plethora and an escalation of crime in the community, and we keep talking about it, we keep talking about it, we keep talking about it, but we're not, there is no accountability in terms of who ultimately takes responsibility. As I was saying to you during the break, the idea of accountability is almost like a foreign language in Cayman. When you look at staff in the public sector, for example, that's been on leave for a long period of time and getting a salary, ultimately, it is the governor's responsibility to actually put those issues and matters in check. When we look at accountability in the private sector, when we talk about attitudes towards Caymanian employment, we see that we don't enforce the immigration law. Again, the whole idea of accountability. When we look now at the policing in the community, and this is not to say something is not being done, but who do we hold accountable when things fall apart? And it just seems to be something that's in the air.
Okay. Just before we go to our news break, one of our listeners has sent a message and said they just saw Digicel by Casanovas taped off, and the police are there, glass smash, but not sure if they were able to get in. So again, it seems as if it may be one of those smash and grab situations again. So we want to talk more about this upsurge. We see it has its cycles, ebbs and flows, in relation to it. Of course, we invite our listeners' comments as well. If you have any comments, if you have any experiences when it comes to being the victim of criminal activity here in the Cayman Islands as well. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back immediately after the news. Good morning. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorrit Connor. My co-host in the studio with me this morning is Ms. Teresa Pitcairn. Dr. Steve McField is not with us. He's still involved in court proceedings, but I did receive a call from him, and he wanted to remind us of some of the issues that he raised in relation to crime in the Cayman Islands. Wanted to remind us about his warnings in the 80s and in the 90s about criminal gangs in the Cayman Islands, and the then government of the days, the government's denial of any criminal or any gangs, the existence of any gangs in the Cayman Islands. They spoke to them as groups or whatever. So we stuck our head in the sand then when it came to the existence of gangs in the Cayman Islands. And as a result, we are now seeing what has come about, of that, because now we're prosecuting the parents and grandparents, possibly, or even those persons who were involved in gangs at that point in time, who are now parents, their children and grandchildren are now also involved in criminal activity as well. Now, we're not trying to paint a picture that everyone is involved in criminal activity, but we at the same time do not want to deny that there is serious criminal activity here in the Cayman Islands. Mr. Markfield also wanted to impress upon us the fact that when he was campaigning for political office, that one of his main contentions, main points of argument was the firming up of our borders, just like Ms. Teresa spoke about earlier, and some of our callers referred to deportees from the other jurisdictions, in particular the United Kingdom and the United States of America. I will talk about that a little bit later, because the immigration and the government of the Cayman Islands has to rely on the information that they receive from these jurisdictions in relation to their deportees. Some will willingly give that information. Others are hesitant about providing and sharing that information. Some not realizing that it is also a revolving door when it comes to deportees, especially in the United States. You see so many people who have been deported and return to the United States and are deported again, which means that, there is a leak, a gap somewhere, a little opening where people are able to do that. So the sharing of information is extremely important. But if we were to look at the statistics here in the Cayman Islands, much of our criminal activity is homegrown. Yes, when it comes to the drug trafficking, we get Caymanians and other nationalities are involved in that, with the canoes going back and forth and everything else. But when you look at a lot of the crimes taking place here, like the robberies and stuff like that, many of those are involving homegrown criminals. Ms. Teresa.
Yes, we go back to what the police tend to say, that quite the vast majority of persons that are in the prisons today are Caymanians, and we haven't quite been able to address it appropriately. And for me, it's about accountability again. The leader of the opposition just raised the issue, but I would like to know what it will take to take a serious approach to dealing with crime. As I was saying to you during the break, only 2 cents, only 2 cents is spent on crime prevention for every dollar that is spent on addressing crime after it has occurred. And we tend to choose imprisonment for rehabilitation, but we know that that doesn't stop the revolving door when criminals go in and criminals come out. Caymanians are waiting on someone to take care of this because they believe the police has responsibility, but we see, and it's hard to, it's like beating up on teachers. We find we're having this conversation about policing, and I'm sure there are different issues that are involved to address it sensibly. But we must have some kind of sensible conversation where we actually see results. I don't know, when you speak to some people, some of the time they will say that one of the reasons why you can't get proper policing here, and I'm hesitant to say proper policing because I don't know. I know that some of the police that I know, they work really, really hard. I know, for example, that they're trying different ways in order to integrate with the public. Some of them have started to have football programs to see if, that kind of like shows that that our police care and, they're honest and they're really concerned about the community's well-being rather than focusing primarily on solving the case or solving the problem that has arisen. But do we look also at the composition of our policing in the police force? Because some people talk about some of the issues with relationships within the police force. Maybe that causes an issue as to why we have so much concerns with the outcome with policing. One of the comments someone sent to me just now was about the recent accident where a police allegedly walked away from where the accident occurred up there by Hurley's. And coming back to this whole question of accountability again, if it were a local that walked away from the scene of an accident, would the police wait until that local person or other person actually came to the police and actually walked in and presented themselves for the matter, or would they be out taking a different approach trying to find that particular individual?
Mm-hmm. And on that point, we see now where the local newspapers, one newspaper has actually both newspapers have actually named the inspector, and one online newspaper has actually published his photograph. The other newspaper just in one section, a corner of the newspaper, highlights the fact that who the person is, and no more than that. So that has now finally come out into the open.
So it's balancing that lack of public trust on the one hand, addressing the concerns of accountability, dealing with, do we know whether or not there is an implicit bias where cultural issues and stuff like that is concerned within the police force? What do we look at recruiting and promoting and ensuring that you have a sort of a fair and respectful process with it? Because what goes on internally is also a reflection of what happens outside. Policing, really good policing involves people being in the car and staying in the environment where they know the gangs are. Mm-hmm. And I've asked a few friends of mine, certainly last night, 3 of them, do we have what we used to have where, the police will go and stay in areas where they know that you have certain homegrown gangs that you spoke of just now, and actually circle and police that area, and then balancing that against, people having their rights, and not always being subject to kind of the kind of abuse that could be perceived as, I don't know. We just need to find some way to strike the right balance between prevention and control, and we haven't managed to strike that balance.
Okay, I'm looking at a study here entitled "Tackling Youth Violence and Crime in the Caribbean." Of course, this was published, and it talked about youth crime offenders between 1996 and 2005. And I'm going to mention some of the stats here because they correspond very closely to what obtains today as well. It hasn't changed much. Number one, youth 25 years or younger were responsible for 52% of arrests for total major crimes, 52% of murders, 59% of shootings, 54% of robberies. 73% of all persons arrested for major crimes were 30 years or under. And if we look at the statistics today, they are very, very similar in that. Then when we look at some of the figures from our latest census, and we look at where the number of unemployed Caymanians are, they fall within that same age group. Yeah, that tells us something.
Yeah, and it's the same comment that the former premier of the Bahamas made when, I think this was last year sometime. It was very recent, where he spoke of the youth, and again, and I quote, falling between the cracks, where they don't have the opportunities to move forward. And, we always tend to know that, when persons are unable to take care of their families, themselves, they will find other economic means of taking care of themselves, and they go outside the accepted norms. So, which is why we are seeing that proliferation of gangs on the one hand, and guns on the next, and of course, the breaking our laws, and the lack of the kind of accountability that we we don't seem to have. People aren't afraid. I mean, OC, they go right in the broad daylight to go and hold up, place. One lady in one of the articles that I read, the lady that manages Mr. Arthur's store, she's in her 80s. She says that they break in her place all the time, and it's now at a point where she accepts it. She says she's not even afraid. I can't remember where I saw the article, but I was this morning, like I said, I got up really early and started to read. But a lady in her 80s will sit down and watch people come in with a gun, hold up the shop. She don't even break a sweat because she's now accustomed to it. When did we get to this place?
Stage. Yes.
I don't know. But we got to really find that balance. And going to the point that Dr. McField made and Ezard made, we really need to have some kind of forum where this is discussed. But more importantly, Caymanians must get involved. We must get involved. You just can't take the attitude where, this is something that we have to come and accept. It won't go away unless we all get involved. And then, you get into the issue, can we trust the police? Well, we got to start somewhere. It can't be police on the one hand, and then it can't be them and us. It has to be some kind of integrative approach to actually make this successful.
This particular study, and this is a CARICOM study that I'm looking at here, and it talks about youth at risk, products of system failure. And some of those system failures are listed as family systems, a failure in the family system, failure in the educational system, failure in the media system, failure in our health system, the cultural decadence that exists, within a society, and the social support and correctional as well, the lack thereof. Then it also talks about the typology of gang violence. And the features of first-generation gangs, going to what Dr. Steve McField talked about, turf-oriented, loose and unsophisticated leadership. Motives are turf protection and petty cash acquisition. That's important because that's what we're seeing here, petty cash acquisition. When you go and you rob a gas station and you say, give me all of the money that you have in the till, or you go to Mr. Arthur's store. As a matter of fact, I need to put a little correction in here as well, because I saw some of the news organizations talking about MacArthur's store. It's Mr. Arthur's store. I don't know where the MacArthur came in from in it, but I believe that even our radio station here, Radio Cayman, was guilty of that somewhere. I think I may have heard someone pronounce it as MacArthur's store. It is Mr. Arthur's store, Mr. Arthur Borden's store. So we have to get that cultural relevance there, Mr. Arthur's store. One time they used to be called the 7-Eleven as well, and I'm not sure whether or not trademark rights and stuff like that prevented them from.
But that was
continuing
long
to call
before.
That before.
Yeah, I mean,
7-Eleven,
they were above the curve, ahead of the curve. But the thing is, violence actually limits our choices, and it disrupts our lives. I mean, it's that simple. I'm just trying to find one of the studies that I looked at this morning.
While you find that, we'll take a caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning to both of you.
Good morning, ma'am.
Lorna Bush.
Hi, Lorna.
Hi. You're talking about what to me now seems to be the root of most of our problems. And the gang culture, unfortunately, gives some validity to a lot of our young people who unfortunately feel lost,
Mm-hmm.
So they're looking for leadership, they're looking for power, they're looking for in a sense, a sort of security and some respect, which they get in these gangs, which are, organized to at least a certain extent. But what we don't need is more discussion. We talk about, we have to talk about it. No, we've been talking about this for a very, very long time. What we have not been doing is taking interventive action. We haven't been intervening to do. Now, in this very last election, it was a buzzword. Everybody that was on the campaign trail talked about our social problems, talked about what the causes were,
Mm-hmm.
all of that. We need to take some action. And I want to challenge those people, the premier in particular, who ran against Dr. Frank Maxfield in Red Bay, and he picked up on it. It became one of his themes, the social problems. But what we need to do now is utilize some of that very homegrown expertise that we have, because consultants coming in from overseas do not have that same intimate knowledge of our culture, of the breakdown, of the things that led to this. So without any fear or hesitation, I want to recommend to the premier, to the ministers who are now responsible for this, to please take Dr. Frank Maxfield on board in a consultative role or whatever role they can fit him into, so that he can put some of this knowledge and expertise to work, that we can finally, take charge of the situation and bring about the change that we need, the positive change. If these young men, for the most part, but there are girls involved as well, it's because they're generally lacking something, and that lack starts from way, way early.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to start addressing this at the root, and we need to really start from yesterday.
My caller, question, what do we do about the day-to-day criminal activity that we have going on? How do we address that? Because we can certainly address the historical nature of it, and how do we go about moving forward. But how do we satisfy the concerns of those persons who are victims of the crimes now? What do we do about that?
Well,
Use some
absolutely.
practical steps.
Yes.
Some practical day-to-day steps.
We have to crack
Yeah.
down on the perpetrators that's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
We would be foolish to believe you can go now and start in early childhood, and that's going to take care of what's happening
Yes.
right here, right now. No, that would be foolish. And we know that, only just a few short years ago, when I think it was Baines, the police commissioner, who came in, and he made this proclamation that it's only about 13 people involved with the guns and the gangs, Well, it's still fairly small. Let us take care of it. Go in there. We are told by verified sources that a lot of the crime that's taking place on the street is actually orchestrated from within Northward Prison. We have people in the know. We have people who know what's happening. Now we need to get some of that knowledge to work and nip this thing in the bud before it gets any bigger.
Lorna, how do we build relationships based on trust, so that the information that people have can be conveyed, whether it's to the police, whether it's the national security? You see, that's a part of the problem, the lack of trust and the perceived lack of transparency and accountability as well.
Well, it is a big part of the problem. And how do we go, it actually means having to try to go back to the way things were. And we know that's sort of impossible, because community policing is not what it used to be. We don't have our own people on the beat, patrolling. And you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Your mom, my uncle,
Mm-hmm.
those people were all involved back in that day when if something was going on, they would be made aware of it by concerned citizens. Now, that has seriously broken down, because there are people who can tell you they have been targeted as a result of having spoken out. It's not an easy situation to rectify, and I would be foolish to tell you that I have all the answers, but I know that there has to be a way that we can get through it. There has to be the experts, those who study crime, who know what to do, because there's not every little country with a population of 50,000 people that's going through what we are going through.
Yeah.
But
Our situation has totally skyrocketed, and too many people are prepared to just sit back and accept it. We talk nonsense about having such vast borders. I mean, how can a 26-mile island have such vast borders that we can't protect it? You know, what do we have? 100 miles of coastline? That's nothing, you know? So, like I said, I don't have the answers, but I know right now, if I were to become the leader of this country, I would make sure that I have access and that I surround myself with the people who do have the expertise and the knowledge to correct it. There's no one person in this world, whether he's leader of the biggest country in the world, that has all of the information to fix all of the problems. The key to it is finding the various people in the various categories who do, and then making absolute use of that expertise.
Thank you very much, caller, for that. Thank you very much for that. We have one more caller. Paul, do we want to take a break first or take the caller? We're going to take a break. We're going to ask that caller to just hang in there. Quick commercial break. When we return, we will come directly to you. Good morning. Welcome back to For the Record. As promised, we're going straight to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Thanks for being so patient.
Good morning, Mr. Ossie.
Good morning, ma'am.
And good morning to you, Miss Teresa.
Good morning, Miss
This
Georgia.
is Georgia Lebank, and I hope both of you and your family members are all well.
Thank you.
And to you.
The other day I asked a question, I didn't get an answer, but I'm not asking that question this morning, Mr.
I think we did respond to your query though.
Anyway, let's not worry about that. I have a very simple question this morning for you, Mr. Ossie, and for Mr. Reeson. If you have a son or a daughter, which I know both of you have children, I too have children and grandchildren, and that young man or that young woman came home with quite a bundle of money. Now you listen carefully and answer, please. When I'm through, I'll listen to your answers. And you know that you're just an ordinary, average sort of poor family. Wouldn't you say to that young man or that young woman, my son or my daughter, where in the world did you get all this money? When my two oldest daughters were little girls and they went to school, occasionally they would come home in days when we had the silver, pound, shilling, pence, and they would have a 6 cents or a shilling. Okay, where in the world did you get that 6 cents or that 3 cents or that shilling from? Because I know I didn't give it to you before you left home. Oh, well, Uncle so-and-so, cousin so-and-so gave it to me. That was quite all right because I knew the people with whom we associated. But nowadays, I often wonder, Mr. Risa and Mr. Ossie, when mothers or fathers or any family member sees their family members flashing loads of money around, where did they think it came from? Where? That's the question I want answered. What do you think? And I value both of you. You're very intelligent, and I trust to hear a very good answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Georgette. We have some other callers, but we want to answer Ms. Georgette's query first because she waited quite a while to ask that question. And my rhetorical question would be, how many situations do we find these days where a family member will turn in another family member for a suspected crime? Not many of them do that. Many of them are benefiting from the proceeds of those crimes, as well. So, the morality that we had before. We no longer have that as well, and maybe that's because so many people are struggling.
Well, this, and that's a practical reality. I know that when we do the ACT things with Bonnie and Michael Miles, where we go into the school to talk a little bit about that, and you ask the kids, what would, we give them examples of what happens when you go to the prison and so on, and we will ask them the question, what do you think motivates people to get involved with crime? And they will tell you right off the bat, well, if mama don't have any money, so and so will give her. If we don't have any food to eat, so and so. And that is one of the reasons why gangs become so, I won't use the word popular, but they have legitimacy because people see them as providing safety. They create jobs. They give people food to eat. They have their own internal penal code, So it's an unfortunate situation, but it is what it is.
And that's what create dons as well in those communities and as well. Let's go to the next caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Issa and Mr. Connor. How are you all doing?
Fine,
Good
morning.
morning. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, about this crime. I mean, this week I put on my old police cap on and I sat down by my table to open my mind up. This been going on for quite a long time. None of these people are being caught. And I really don't think there is nobody coming out of Northwood Prison that is doing that. This is an organized situation. I feel that these are people that got a day job and they're going down. If you look at the modus operandi and you look at how they do it and where they're doing it, remember these two gas stations, they deal with MoneyGram, they deal with CUC. The other gas stations don't deal with that. And another thing, the little 7-Eleven store, they knows quite well when to go there. And if you see the gas station robberies, you know the time that they go there. It's been going on for years and years. And no one is catching these people. This is organized. This is not a simple little thing. This is organized. I mean, 3 robberies in one night.
Yeah.
And no idea who's doing it. But this has been going on a long time. And this is not people come out of Northwood. Trust me, they get on good in Northwood. Things are nice in Northwood. So I really doubt that anybody that's doing this crime is coming out of Northwood. That is my thinking as an old policeman.
But don't you think, caller, that the mere fact that the way that it is organized, it is obviously, this is not a newcomer, this is not a novice who is committing these crimes.
Exactly. You're right.
So the argument that you look at who was recently released from Northwood is because they have a particular modus operandi, a mode of operation that they go about. And in most instances, these are people who have been previously convicted of crimes, of similar crimes.
Yeah, but these guys, these, like I say, I think these people have a day-to-day job, and they're doing it.
But Mr. Shillette, where do they get the time from to sit down and scout people out? To observe the moods, to observe the times, to know when the cash is coming in and out. Where do they get the kind of time from? And I don't get the impression that they're loose and unsophisticated. I get the impression that they're really, really organized.
Yes.
Thank you. Miss Teresa, this not been going on today. Now, this been going on, and the same gas stations being hit. And I agree with Miss Lorna. I'm finishing now. I agree with Miss Lorna that they would be nice if they could take some advice or give Dr. Frank McField a job in his field that he's quite capable of. But no, I really believe that Dr. Frank, they would have to bring in somebody from England for that job instead of giving it to him, because he's a Caymanian and the Caymanians are not qualified enough to do that job. So what they're going to do, they would probably, it's a good idea, but let's bring in some foreigner from overseas to do it when Dr. system I feel is capable of doing the job.
Thank you very much,
So
caller.
that's what I think
Ask you
about
to
it.
leave us there.
They're not local people.
Okay. We have one more caller, two callers. First caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Morning, Mr. O.C. Good morning to Mrs. Pitcairn. It's Johan Moxham.
Morning, sir.
Hi, Johan.
First of all, just let me start off on a positive note. Mr. O.C., best thing you've done for your show, sir, is on board Mrs. Pitcairn. Ma'am, your insight, your research, your bravery, your objectivity, and your calling it exactly as it is a breath of fresh air. Greatly appreciated. Please don't stop. I think you guys make a good duo, but Miss Pitcairn, just keep pushing, because you are preaching gospel and you're opening many, many eyes to the reality of what goes on in multiple sectors. So please don't stop doing what you do. Jumping straight into the crime thing, I think a lot of positive things have been said today, and I just want to lend my voice to that by asking and saying this isn't about politics anymore. This is about a quality of life issue. It's been that way for the longest while. From what I recollect and everything that I've read, every time the police have needed resources, money, funding, budget, they've gotten it from successive governments. So we can't not come up now with say that they haven't had support. Multiple police commissioners have been given all the bells and whistles, trinkets that they've been needed to fight crime. I'm going to ask this one question because it boils down to exactly what you both have been saying. It's about accountability. When you have armed robberies and you have press releases from the police, from the RCIP, asking for the whereabouts of cars that have been used in robberies, my question is, why in the world did we spend millions and millions of dollars on a CCTV system if nobody's able to track cars that use the main roads to track the activity of said cars? There's a database clearly at DMV that says how many red Hondas we got, how many blue Mitsubishis we got, so on and so forth. But still yet, it's like we spend all of this money and we don't get any real returns from it. So,
but caller, if I may interrupt for a second there, but we also saw the outcry when people were under the impression that the new system that vehicle and licensing are introducing, would be able to track people's movement. So you have this whole personal issue, privacy issue against versus the ability of law enforcement to be able to address crime.
No, I understand, and nobody wants to live in a police state, and privacy must be protected. I get that. But I look at it personally from the standpoint of, I not committed no crimes, I not done nothing wrong. If you all want to track
nothing
me,
to hide, yes.
It's really simple. I got nothing to hide. But just back to the CCTV cameras, are we getting bang for our buck with that deal that requires $1 million payment on an annual basis or whatever that obscene?
And Johan, stick a pin. Who is responsible?
That was my next, but you and I, you read my mind, you're a dangerous lady, and I got mad respect for you. Let me tell you that. It's about accountability. We cannot, and I will say this isn't about red, green, purple, or any of the elected politicians. This is about the people that are responsible for the safety and security of these islands doing your job. It starts at the very top of the spear with the governor and the governor's office. It then cascades down to the deputy governor and whoever's responsible for the RCIPS. This is about...
Don't forget the National Security Council.
Well, the National Security Council is a joke because nobody wants to meet and nobody wants to really talk about anything. I don't understand how crime, safety, and security, along with education and health care, are not the three top priorities of the people. It's written in the Constitution. It's there, but we make excuses because we don't want to offend certain people. If people that come here from abroad, high up, that we did not place here, are not doing their jobs, they need to go. It's really simple. It's about accountability. I'm going to give you, Ms. Teresa said something about, how do we get confidence in the police and how do we work with them? This isn't meant to be sarcastic or cute or rude, but when 24 kilos of cocaine and 60 kilos of weed walk out of the secure lockup of RCIP Central, how in the world am I supposed to have confidence in you when we know that this is a very common thing that goes on?
And no heads roll.
Yep.
No heads roll.
I guarantee you this. If the commissioner had been a Caymanian, him, his dog, and everybody else would have been fired. That's just the way the system is right now, and we as sheep allow these things to happen. My call this morning is to ask the 19 elected representatives that we just chose as a country, please unite, apply the requisite pressure and strategies to ensure and demand that more is done, because we are on the path of becoming the next Jamaica, Bahamas, Bermuda, and all these other countries because of our silence and we don't want to offend. We have too much to lose if we continue to allow these things to happen.
Caller, I'm going to ask you to leave us there, though. We have to go to our headline news, and we have two more callers waiting as well. Thank you very much for that input. Caller, folks, please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back immediately after headline news. Good morning. Welcome back to For the Record. Straight to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Mr. Connor.
Good morning, sir.
This is Paul Holston from South Sound.
How are you doing, Captain Paul?
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Risa.
Good morning, sir.
Speaking about, I think it was Ms. Lorna talking about patrolling the coast. You know, about 30 years ago, when I retired from sea, I came up with an idea about how to protect the coast by having a radar up at the airport and a helicopter. But I was a qualified radar observer at one time, and I was looking a job. But I had a social with one night, I don't remember just where it was, and it was a gentleman, an Englishman from, I think he was working with the shipping register or something there. And I brought this up. Oh, man, he ridiculed me, and that couldn't work in this thing, because they were about to buy a patrol boat to patrol the coast. So he knew of an old Coast Guard in England that was out for sale. So he apparently he was involved in the purchase, arranged for the purchase, and to go up to bring it down. So we had this radar. It couldn't work, but it's one thing, and they got much better equipment today than they had 30 years ago. You couldn't detect it because if these high-powered boats, they leave awake, and that's one thing that it can be. They can be tracked down from. And if the helicopter was sitting in the airport and you detect a target, and you could tell them, direct them exactly where to go to it. Of course, you know, being me a little old black boy from South Sound, nobody would believe. And there's many more things. Cause I got some papers here because I don't talk on the radio very much these days, but I used to write the papers also too about the prison. I suggested having a lookout tower. I've never been to prison, but I've seen plenty on television and all other visual. They all have a tower. So you stop people throwing ganja or anything contraband over the fence, which it should not be a chicken wire fence there. It should be a solid wall. And you would be able to detect. There's so many things. I talked in one of the community meetings with the police here a year or two ago. I told them something about, but as usual, because I got experience in things that they don't have, because stowaways and many ports, that's one of the most dangerous things you can have. And I have a lot of experience with that. But they won't listen to me. I spoke to one police officer about the beat officer for South Sound. Oh, yeah, I can bring him to see you. Haven't seen him yet. So that is my little 2 cents today. But a lot of these things could be solved because, well, I'm not going to take up too much time. I got another idea. But I don't want to take up too much time about that, so maybe another time.
Thank you very much, Captain Paul. One of our listeners saying they're not sure whether or not if we have addressed the matter of 40-plus police officers who have been sent off on time, been given time off because of accumulated overtime. Now, we spoke about resources before. You heard Mr. Moxham talk about the fact that in most instances, the police have always been given the resources that they have asked for, unlike, and this is my segue here. Unlike the British Virgin Islands, where their legislature refused to vote additional funds, and as a result of that, the governor took $1 million, ordered for it to be paid to the police department for their resources, again using the governor's reserve powers to do that because the legislature refused to vote the monies.
OC, do we get value for money? I mean,
Yes.
it's just very simple to me. We pay our politicians. Do we get value for money? Let's talk. Do they do their jobs? Do they do their jobs well? Do we hold them accountable? This is all for naught for me, and kind of like a waste of time to have the conversation if we aren't going to get really serious about it. The cost of crime in Jamaica is like 529 million a year that is lost in income. In Trinidad and Tobago, a 1% reduction in youth crime would boost their tourism industry by 35 million per annum. Do we want to get to a place, as you rightly say, where, the folks at Mr. Arthur's shop just come and accept it? What when it escalates into something really, really serious? We have invested a significant amount of money in policing, and we have accepted their failure. I mean, let's just be straight up, right? Yep. I mean, we or at least that's what we see. But we have to, and I hope people don't take this personal. It's not personal. It's some objective reality and criticism that we all got to be on board on. We can't have thin skins with this. Yeah.
Yep. And the listener also says that some police officers have been given up to 6 months' time off, and they question why doesn't the government negotiate a payoff, say 50% of what is due. And that is good, but what you want to ensure also is that we don't leave any excuse for them to be able to accumulate this over time. So as a result of that, they're compensated in some way. There has to be proper time management in the police service.
This don't happen in the private sector,
well.
OC. This don't happen in the private sector.
Two callers. Let's go to the phone lines. First caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yes, good morning, OC.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Miss Teresa.
Mm-hmm.
I called this morning, I think it was this third caller this morning, concerned about the crime and stuff in the Cayman Islands. I put 5 years as a police officer in the Grand Cayman, traffic and marine patrol, me and my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And, we used to patrol like 10, 15 miles off of Grand Cayman, right? We come out in the morning, 7 o'clock, check in the station, pick up our boat, and we gone. We come back in 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We circle the island 3 times. We patrolling. We're not parked by a dock, waiting to hear something and then go out. And I strongly, strongly believe right now the people have spoken. They got a coalition government. The government right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say this to the Premier. See, I know they're listening. You have to be strong and get rid of these policemen we got as foreigners, because you cannot send a Cayman to Jamaica, Trinidad, or Barbados to become a policeman. He can't hold a position there. What do we do with them here? 35 years ago, we was in the force. We never had these kind of crimes. We had problems, but not crime like this. We had people there that if you do not know your own people that you going to be protecting, how you expect to find crime if you don't know the people,
mm-hmm.
and the people don't know you?
Mm-hmm.
There ain't no way in the world you can go into a country and you don't know nobody there, and you can go to somebody and ask them, do you see anything happen last night? And I tell you, they don't know because they know who you are.
Yep.
You see, thank you, caller, because this goes to the root of one of the points we raised, the idea of trust, right? I hope people don't take this personal. It's not intended to be personal. When you are in an environment and you're supposed to be developing trust, and you're supposed to have people understanding that you care about them, right? Not in a situation where, there's certain attitudes that you have towards a certain group. usually Caymanians. These things inhibit and prevent us from doing the job that we're supposed to do. And it prevents you from developing the kind of trust that you need to have in order to combat this. And touching on Lorna's point, trust. When you choose people that are going to be responsible for this, you also need citizens that Caymanians trust, who they know are straight up, and they're not going to pull in a back deals and do any kind of craziness that's going to interfere with people's rights. But you need to have, I agree with you.
That's right.
Final comments from your caller.
One more thing. If the people in this country now was just get up and speak out and be serious, this is their country. It's not what England wanted you to give us. It's what we wanted and what we want to get now. The thing about it, if we keep following those people, because I remember when I went to England, we were 36 of us in a giant ship. When I was seaman, and they never know where we came from. How all of a sudden now, because we upgrade ourselves to a certain level now, they want to take over? But no, it's time for us to, if we got to get rid of England, we have to get rid of them, because if not, we're going to go down the drain. We're going to be worse than the other Caribbean countries.
We're going to ask you to leave us there, caller. Thank you very much for that. Let's take the other caller before we go to a break. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yeah, good morning, folks. How are we doing this morning?
Fine, and yourself?
Fine, thanks. Yes, just quickly as usual for me. Mr. Connor, are you able to say how many locals applied at the Commissioner of Police job?
No, not able to.
Yeah, I think, and from my understanding, there was it was quite a few. And I also understood that on the board that made that decision or choose the present Commissioner of Police, there was a few Caymanians as well on that board, if not all. So I'm saying that to say this. This is where we start off again, that giving someone else the preference of our own Caymanian, who I feel sure, because I had my training and my experience as a police officer as well. Some of those people that applied for that, I feel they were qualified to job, not only qualified, but I think their intention was to see the Cayman Islands police to the fullest that was possible in these times. So I don't know what's going to happen, but where the mistrust, in my opinion, starts is that our own people do not see it fit to give our own people a break to start to police this island. So we have a problem on our hands, and outspoken, I would say this is where some of the problems start, that we do not have the confidence to give our own people a chance to police this island. Mm-hmm. And thank you so much, and have a good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, caller. Before we go to the break, just one comment in relation to the police, Royal Cayman Islands Police Service do not do themselves any good either when you have situations as reported where a senior police officer leaves the scene of an accident and they're unable to locate that police officer for several days.
Come on.
It doesn't do well for the reputation of the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service. Let's go to a commercial break. For the record, we'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We'd actually planned to look at a study that was done by Ambassador Isbin C. Williams on behalf of CARICOM in relation to the tackling youth violence and crime in the Caribbean. And it has several facets and phases to it. It talks about first, second, and third generation gangs, and we wanted to basically look at where we are and try to highlight the fact that we we don't want to get any further than where we are in relation to it. We were going to suspend calls to be able to do that, but we have 2 callers, so we're going to go to the phone lines because what our listeners and callers think is extremely important to us. We can always get to this at another show at another time. So let's go to our phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Fine. Good morning. And yourself?
I'm doing good. I really love the talk show this morning, and I'm hoping and praying that the voices of the people will be heard.
Thank you. We're hardly hearing you though.
There's just a few points that I would like to bring across.
Okay.
And the first one, the question is, I remember a couple on one of the previous talk shows. Someone had called in about investing in the youth. And the question I would like to ask is, the millions that is used for, let's say, the license plate, should have been, or wouldn't you think that it would have been good to use that as an investment to, develop an area for training for the youth? One. My second thing is, I would like to just talk to parents. If I may, just for a minute. Parents, we need to remember that everything starts at the home. From we bring our children into the world. And that first opportunity, examples and teachings begin from baby stage. I'm asking us as parents to please spend time to train. Caymanian kids are one of the most well-mannered kids throughout the world. When you're talking to them, yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir. And I'm asking parents, please, just spend the time and invest in another thing. When the teachers, they are so afraid to really reach out and to discipline or train the children in the way that they need to be trained, because, and this is from experience, a child will do something wrong in school, and that child is, you wait till I go home, I will tell my mama and my daddy, and they will come to you. And this kind of helps to put fear into teachers, because they know when the parents come, it's going to be a whole different thing. I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to say is, parents, we have to give teachers, they are there for a reason, they're there for a purpose. We cannot take that away from them and give our child or our children the right wrong. Meaning, if they're wrong, they're wrong, and if they're right, they're right. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, we do.
But it goes back to that same point of trust. Parents don't trust, and we have to get to the root of it. Parents don't trust generally in those circumstances teachers to do what is right. For some reason, they may have a view that the teachers are not going to do what's right. Teachers then don't have faith in the kids, because some of the times they don't believe that the kids are worthy. They don't meet the kids where they ought to be in order to educate them. And I meant, when I say meet, I don't mean meet physically, but I mean meet intellectually. And that is something that has to be addressed.
That's right. So true. And you know what? I have, and as I said to you, I'm speaking from experience. We need to, as parents, take time out to go to the school. I remember I went to the John Gray High School, and I spoke to the teacher there, and I'm going to be quick.
Yes, because we have we almost.
Yeah, I know. And the teacher was like, we would take our break to make sure that if a child don't understand something, that they would put this extra time into our children, right? And so we as parents have to do our part and allow the teachers to do theirs. Please, parents, I'm begging you.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much, caller, for that. Let's go to the next caller. We're going to ask you to be as brief as possible. We're running out of time. Good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm just to kind of make a lot of ideas, points, but so I'll go through them quickly.
Sure.
I don't believe that these criminals, as you pointed out, are organized. Most of them are very inexperienced, and you can see from when you watch the videos of these young men, the adrenaline rushing on them. If you look at Reflections, well, go to YouTube and look at Reflections, Food for Less Robbery, right? Which has happened nearly 7 years ago. We had audio on that thing, and you could see that you could hear from their voices, and they were hollering back and forth, "Go get the money, go get the money, go get the money," back and forth. They even said the name of one of the robbers in the video. I pointed that out to numerous police officers. They all know the individual by his alias and his real name, and nothing was done. Like I said, almost now 7 years. There's many ways that you can get these young guys, but to think about it this way, the biggest money maker for most countries is a military. Cayman doesn't have a military, so the next best thing is the police and the security services. Think about which job that you get rewarded for doing a bad job. Which other job? There's none. Every time there's an increase in crime, there's a call for increase in revenue, money. So the police or companies are forced to hire more security guards, right? Which doesn't do anything besides cost us money. They don't do the job. And Teresa pointed out about the value for money for the politicians. It isn't value for money for the politicians. It's value for money for the police. I've been in business 23 years, 8 armed robberies, countless burglaries. Can't tell you how many shoplifters, and everyone we have reported. And in my entire 23 years, I went to court once for someone who shoplifted one top out of the store.
Yeah. Do you have a position on
none have been caught, right?
Do you have a position on your ability to arm yourself?
I was calling that out for years. Even if we didn't arm ourselves, even we were asking for bulletproof vests. I went on television, I went on radio countless times. I asked for mace. You know, when I said I wanted pepper spray, you know what a police officer had the nerve to tell me? "Oh, you don't want to have that because if we allow that, the criminals are going to come and rob us with that." You know what I said to her? I said, "Mom, I wish that's what they come and rob us with, because right now they come in with guns and machete, right? And that's what these little boys, like I said, they don't have organization. They go and get a machete, they come and rob, they get a couple $100, then they buy a gun. That is what they do."
But then they're graduating from one level to the next. Yes.
I pointed it out to the police. I said, "Listen, guys, you don't need to waste gas patrolling Cayman. You drive off of East End, because most of the boats are coming from Jamaica. We know that. That's what my point was the other day, why we need to legalize growing in Cayman.
Okay.
Right? So that we don't have to get these boats coming to Cayman. I said, you simply get the boat, you go off East End, you turn the engine off, you put a microphone in the water, because like Captain Halson from Southern pointed out, every boat has an engine and a propulsion. All you have to do is turn your engine off and sit and listen, and you can hear the boats coming. You can send up the helicopter in, and then you can easily catch the individual. We have an X-ray machine at the airport that is never used. The only I fly often, now every couple of weeks, and the only time I see them using that is when they're demonstrating it to kids from a school class, right? Every bag, when you go to Panama, for example, every bag, including your hand luggage, is X-rayed upon arrival. There's no reason that can't happen in Cayman. Put an X-ray by every counter and every bag that comes in there, right? They got an X-ray machine at the port, so they can check that way. And then, like if they listened off the coast of Cayman, they could catch boats there. But there's no incentive for the police to catch the criminals, because they get more overtime, they get more cars, they get more pay. Like I said, we got a stupid camera system, costs millions of dollars. I've bought countless cameras, right? The most expensive camera, just to make a point, and my final point, what that I bought was a $1,000 camera that could do 360, auto track an individual, and I paid, when I bought one, with no volume discount, $1,000. We got 187 cameras. So that would be $187,000. How did, in God's name, did we get to $2.5 million with cameras that are fixed, that can't move, that I can buy for $50 to $100, right? These cameras cannot see in the night. And when a car comes past them, the headlights blind the cameras. So in the dark, they can't see. And when the car is passing, they can't see. And they're not linked to each other as people think. So when they say, but why the police sitting down, they can't watch? They can't. They have to send a truck to go and get a flash drive and flash the memory on the camera. And if there's anything there to even be seen, it can only see in the day. And most times you can get it clearly. When people even get in an accident in the day, the cameras don't even record good enough to see it. They come to us as business people and ask, where is our footage? Right?
And I ask you to leave us there, caller, on that note. Thank you very much. Very good points raised. Our last caller for the morning. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, OC.
Good morning.
Good morning, Teresa.
Hi, morning.
This is Richard Bernard. I haven't
Hi,
called
Richard.
in for a while.
Yes.
But from my perspective, one of the main reasons that we're facing a lot of these problems here in our country today is we have so many laws, but lack of enforcement. Case in point, there's tons of cars in the broad day that they have the excessive tinted glass that you can't see in the car, and I'm sure that driver has a problem of seeing on the outside. In addition, a lot of these cars are driving with the excessive music. You can hear them coming from a mile down the road. The police does absolutely nothing about it. In addition, again, a lot of these cars are being parked up on sidewalks. Pedestrians have to go and walk in the streets. I mean, 2 years ago, I remember March, the National Roads Authority were giving all of the business owners until March 15th, that was 2014, to get all sidewalk signs off or advertising signs off of the sidewalk. 2 years has now passed. This is past March 2017. And still you're seeing a lot of these businesses still advertising with signs on the sidewalk, the pedestrians. And then pedestrians have to be walking in the streets. I mean, we have these laws, but again, what I'm saying is lack of enforcement. We need to enforce these laws.
Thank you very much, caller,
Gentlemen,
for that.
thank you. Right.
Have a great day. Ms. Teresa, closing comments.
Right. First of all, I'd like to ensure that what we said this morning was taken in the spirit in which it was shared, that no one takes it personal, that no one perceives this as us beating up against institutions. And when I said it, I actually felt a little reticent as well, and a little conserved and a little sensitive. But the truth is the truth. We have a flawed and expensive policing system. It's just what it is. We don't know what is going on which prevents it or inhibits the organization from delivering, based on the kind of financial investments that we make very, very, very often. The politicians are always saying that they invest the money whenever it's raised. I would like to see us take, a closer look, a real look at how we're going to address these issues, and so that we don't come like the lady at Mr. Arthur's shop, where you just get so accustomed to accepting crime, because this is only going to escalate based on what we've seen in that United Nations article that we were looking at. OC, it's not going to get any better, and the whole idea of solving where we get the firearms from, because that is a key role in all of this.
Okay. One comment that we have here is not really linked to what we're discussing this morning, but I'll just mention it in closing. The writer talks about a phrase that they heard repeatedly from one prominent politician on the campaign trail, using the slogan, "Out of many, one people," which they recognize and attribute as the Jamaican the motto for Jamaica, and they pointed out that ours is "He has founded it upon the seas," and they just had some comment on that. Like I said, it's not linked at all to our discussion this morning, but I would like to take the opportunity and welcome more discussion on this. I know, Ms. Teresa, you won't be here, but to look at that CARICOM report and to look at the various generations of gang violence, the generational steps that gang violence takes as well. I also appreciate the one of the callers who's a business owner in the Cayman Islands and his observation based on his experience in his stores that many of these are amateur robberies that are taking place, they're being perpetrated by amateurs because of the nervousness. And when we look at those various stages, we see that it starts with these opportunistic crimes. They get the $100, a couple of $100 or whatever, but then what do they do with those funds? They use it to enhance their ability to intimidate or to rob, be more forceful in terms of their robberies by buying a gun or maybe even renting.
They get confident.
Even renting a gun because of what we've seen in other jurisdictions, and we hear about it here in the Cayman Islands as well. The mere fact, because of the limited number of guns in the island, that you have the ability to go to someone and to rent a gun for you to be able to commit a crime, and then you return that gun to whoever owns it after that as well. So lots of things to discuss, but it's important for us to get to the bottom of it because there is too much to be lost. We have lives that can be lost as a result of it. We have our earnings that can be lost. We have our reputation that can be lost. Our mere confidence and ability in our government to protect us. We could lose that if we fail to address this whole issue as well. Folks, I want to thank you for allowing Radio Cayman, and by extension, For the Record, into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. I also want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. If you can't do that, then I suggest you donate to a worthy charity, because we always want to consider those who need, not necessarily those who want. I say to you, have a great day. Continue to listen to your radio station, Radio Cayman. Join Sterling Dwayne Ebanks at 12 noon for Talk Today. Join me again on Friday on For the Record, where we will have the Honorable Mr. Ezard Miller, Leader of the Opposition, who will be joining us in the studio on Friday. I say to you again, have a great day, and as usual, we ask the good Lord to bless these three wonderful, beautiful Cayman Islands.
Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record.